All right, then.
Okay, I'm recording. We're on our porch again.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it won't be as noisy.
Oops. The chair just gave way.
You might hear some odd noises, but... All right.
It's that squeaking noise, it's just the styrofoam.
Yeah, we had to do something to try to block the traffic noise, so...
Yeah, so we're going to give this a try.
Okay. Welcome to Unearthly Upstate. I am Mari.
And I am Matthew.
And today is our 52nd scheduled episode. We went a little longer than a year because we had that hiatus while I was with the health issues. But this is technically our year anniversary if you go by episodes.
Yes.
So we've done over a year's worth of episodes.
Hooray!
Yay! They say most podcasts don't survive the first 5 episodes. And we've done 52.
That's a horrible rate of attrition.
And right there, that tells you even if we don't get any more listeners, we've already succeeded when it comes to that. We've had enough information.
We've gone the distance.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and unfortunately, we're not ending it on a funny note. We're not ending it on a scary note.
Or even on a really, particularly historically interesting note.
Can be interesting
but
to some people.
If you're into, again, true crime.
It's a true crime. This is a fairly recent one. In fact,
you're in the right place.
Matt and I were both alive when this was going on.
Definitely.
Way too young to remember any of this going on. And we also lived in Wisconsin, so we probably wouldn't care. But to kind of set it up, I do remember kind of being scared of SIDS when I was a little girl because it was all over the news. And possibly due to this. I don't remember if this case was one that we were following or not. I don't remember if this was a case we were following. I do remember being a little girl being scared of SIDS to the point I didn't want to fall asleep some nights.
No, that's terrible.
So yeah, this had repercussions.
Yeah, exactly. Well, growing into my formidable years at the time, during the late 70s, when I first caught wind of the term sudden infant death syndrome.
Right.
I remember segments on it. Sometimes there would be a case reported of SIDS on the local news. Mm-hmm. I never knew where its origins came from until I heard about Waneta Hoyt. Right.
Waneta Hoyt, yes. We're going to talk about a serial killer who suffered Munchausen by proxy.
Yes,
I forgot what the other term is.
It's speculated that she did.
Speculated. You have to excuse us. Lloyd is playing with the chords. So, right.
Can I start us out?
Yes, you may start us out.
I'll just give us an overview.
Okay.
All right. Waneta Hoyt, who lived in New York State. Mm-hmm. Where in New York State? Owego, New York State.
She lived in Owego.
Mm-hmm.
Some sources accidentally put it down as Oswego.
Uh-oh.
It's just a letter off, folks, but believe me, there are totally different parts of the state.
Absolutely. Well, she dropped out of Newark Valley High there at 10th grade, married Jim Hoyt on January 11th, 1964, and from 65 to 71, Hoyt had 5 healthy children who suddenly died. And over 20 years, it was assumed that the children had died from sudden infant death syndrome. Mm-hmm. Who was the doctor that was handling Mrs. Hoyt's case here?
It went to Dr. Steinschneider. And we were going to discuss him in length, too, because there was... Well, we'll get to that.
Okay. And after the death of their last biological child, the Hoyts then adopted Jay, who remained healthy throughout his childhood, probably because the father was a little more present during the time as well. Yeah, and in 1985, a prosecutor dealing with the SIDS case that was very dubious. What was the name of that prosecutor?
William Fitzpatrick. He's still the DA in Onondaga County.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right. And he was dealing with this case and found out about the Hoyt kids. Mm-hmm. And once the case was tracked down, the prosecutor sent this case to a forensic pathologist who concluded the deaths were the result of murder.
Yes.
Yeah, and Hoyt was questioned by the authorities at that time, and she confessed to the murder of her 5 biological children by suffocation. Mm-hmm. Well, varying methods of suffocation, anyway. And complaining about her children's behavior was the reasons she gave for the murder. And although she was never sued for wrongful death, she was arrested, tried for the murders, and found guilty. She was sentenced to 75 years to life. Then she died of pancreatic cancer in August of 1998. Speculation as to the cause of her murderous behavior is that Hoyt may have had Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Okay, I just have to make a complaint. We're setting up no cars go by. As soon as we start recording, every 3 seconds a car is going by. Ugh! I just have to vent right now. Okay. All right, we're going to go into a little more detail. The reason we are recording out here, it's actually noisier in our room. Our upstairs neighbors are doing something in the room above us. Yeah. And I'd rather put up the cars going by than the banging noises that are going on.
It might have something to do with a recent package that they just received this afternoon, so yeah.
They're probably putting something together there. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back and really discuss Juanita Hoyt here. Yes. There is a wonderful breakdown of not only the timeline, they broke her down, does she match all the serial killer checklists and that. And this was put together by Ashley Beverly, Melissa Handoga, and Jubal Pryor Williams from the Department of Psychology at Radford University. I don't have a date on when this was put together. I did find this online, and this is a wonderful breakdown. And Matt did go through a quick overview of what happened, but we're going to go into a little more details. But I just want to point out that she doesn't tick the normal boxes of serial killers in many respects. And there's a thing called the triad, which is animal torture, fire setting, and bedwetting. She had none of that. None of that appeared. Psychological information, she didn't abuse drugs. She didn't abuse alcohol. She did not go to a psychologist prior to the killing, but she did go after. Mm-hmm. Time in a forensic hospital? No, she was never in a forensic hospital. And so there's no diagnosis. She did not commit previous crimes. She had not spent time in jail. She had not spent time in prison. When you're calling her a serial killer, you really can't put her up there with, the likes of...
Well, think of any serial killer out there.
But then when women who kill their children don't really match a lot of that either. And if she was suffering from Munchausen by proxy, that would explain a lot of her motivation. So,
then again, not a whole lot was understood about Munchausen's by proxy back in 1965.
And about SIDS, which is what leads to this case being doubly heartbreaking.
Which is another reason why Juanita Hoyt's case became so protracted.
Yes.
With one child after the other being killed.
So let me go over the children. Well, her son Eric died on January 26, 1965. Mm-hmm. He was only about 100 days old when he passed away. James died on September 26, 1968. Julie died on September 5th, 1968. Molly died on June 5th, 1970. But did you catch the 2 dates prior to that? James and Julie. September 26, 1968 and September 5th, 1968. There's only 21 days between them, the deaths of those 2 children. We also had Noah, who died in July 28th, 1971. Okay, so let's set the stage. So she marries possibly her high school sweetheart. I'm going to say that because they get married. From what I understand, I've read a couple spotty things. It wasn't a nice middle class upbringing and family. He did support the family, but it wasn't like he had the best job in the area.
What did Jim Hoyt do anyway?
The only one I could find verified was working as a security guard at Cornell University.
Okay.
But that sounded like something he got later. He did a lot of construction, I guess, at one point.
Okay.
But she was a stay-at-home mom. And this is the late 60s, of course. And during the course of her loss of her children, she came across the radar of Dr. Steinschneider. Dr. Steinschneider was researching SIDS. It was just recently put in as a diagnosis. And really what it is if they don't know how else the child dies, and they usually are under 2 years old. Mm-hmm. Usually, most of them are under a year old, and if you looked at the dates of the births of some of these children, you realize there was one that was over 2 years old and passed away. Yeah. His theory was it was genetic, caused by sleep apnea. And he was looking for families who had multiple cases of SIDS, because he basically wanted to trace possible causes within the families, genetically and otherwise, that would cause a child to stop breathing and die.
Before sudden infant death syndrome became a diagnosis, they always called it crib death.
Yeah.
And the explanation is, well, the infant wrapped themselves up in a blanket.
Or the cat slept on
Or the
them.
cat slept on them.
Cats were blamed for a lot of it.
Oh, yeah.
Poor kids.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
when he comes up with this reason, it's genetic coupled with sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
How many infants have sleep apnea?
Well, that was his theory, that it was probably undiagnosed sleep apnea.
Well, already it's a crap diagnosis.
Right. But he was trying... He fell into, from what I can understand, he fell into this mistake some researchers fall into, which is they have an output. Okay, they have their theory.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to recreate if I get the scientific process wrong, please correct me. Anyway,
recreate the conditions under
recreate
which...
conditions to prove their theory, or otherwise those conditions will disprove their theory. What he was basically doing was trying to find a situation that proved his theory. Remember a while back, Cornell got into big trouble because their top food scientist was doing exactly that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And he would basically come up with... he would come up with things like, butter's bad for you, and he would run tests to prove that would make the outcome look like butter was bad for you.
One of these researchers that changes...
He was twisting the data, and he was only putting the test in that would support the hypothesis.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
This is kind of what happened with Dr. Steinschneider as well. From his point of view, this poor mother, she's lost these children already. It looks to be like they can't escape SIDS. So she's the perfect candidate for his testing, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
But, let's just say this, there were other people involved, other medical people involved, who did not see it that way and let him know.
Oh, yeah.
And he ignored them. Good example here is a quote. There were 4 nurses who testified at Hoyt's trial and said that Juanita showed little interest in the babies. There was no bonding at all, said Thelma Schneider. Most of us went to Dr. Steinschneider and expressed our fears. We had a gut feeling that something was going on. Either he was in total denial or was not being very objective. An ambulance worker, Robert Vanek, who went to the Hoyt residence when Julie, James, and Noah had died, recalled being stunned by the coroner's conclusion that they had all died of SIDS. I thought 3 in a row. It bothered me. As for the faulty SIDS postmortem diagnosis, the children's bodies were examined not by a forensic pathologist, but by the family physicians. And right there, they think that led into a bias, like what mother would kill her children?
No, absolutely.
Where a forensic pathologist is away from is not known to the family, and they could give a more dispassionate, more objective
Right,
review
exactly. A forensic pathologist could give an unbiased viewpoint as to how the children actually died.
Right.
Such as in the case when the prosecutor sent the case over to finally, a forensic pathologist got to look at it.
Well, you jumped ahead.
Sorry about that.
It actually wasn't till much later, and it was Fitzpatrick, William Fitzpatrick, the DA of Onondaga County. He was, as you said, he was looking at another SIDS death, and he came across Steinschneider's work. And he came across the Hoyt case. And at that time, when the report was wrote up, they never used the name of the family, but he was able to dig enough to find the name of the family. So he contacted not only a forensic pathologist. So William Fitzpatrick started looking into Hoyt, and then called up a forensic pathologist named Linda Norton in Dallas, Texas. And as they started talking, Norton said, I think you may have a serial killer in your hands.
So he had to go out of state
to
find a forensic pathologist that would even look at this case?
I'm not sure. She might have been a forensic pathologist who is specialized in SIDS. That could be it. I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to look for
Sometimes it's down to availability.
It could be, or some sort of weird connection was made. Fitzpatrick couldn't go anything after her at that point. It wasn't until he couldn't go after her at that point because of jurisdiction and whatever. But finally, in 1992, when he became district attorney, he he did track down the family. He got the autopsy records and then sent them to the New York State Police forensic expert, Michael Baden. In 1992, when he became DA, he was able to reopen the case again. He figured out the family in the paper was the Hoyts. He tracked them down. He found the autopsy records and then sent them to the New York State Police forensic expert, Dr. Michael Baden, for review. And each case, Baden said that the autopsies did not support SIDS. As the quote says, they are all healthy children. They had no natural cause of death, and the only reasonable cause was homicidal suffocation.
In varying methods.
In varying methods at this point. Now, at this point, the Hoyts had 5 children naturally who all died, and they adopted a 6th. Jay, who at this point was in his late teens. Mm. So Jay was fine, folks. Jay's around.
And as I said before, because as you indicated before we started the episode, that it was because Jim became more present at home. Mm-hmm. That might have been due to a change in employment or something like that.
Who knows what had happened, but he was
anyway, for some reason, he was a lot more present around the house. And so this didn't give Juanita the opportunity to be
able to kill Jay. Yes.
Yeah, to snuff out Jay.
Yeah. So Fitzpatrick, he's the DA of Onondaga County. She lives in Tioga. Is that how you say it? Tioga. I apologize for anyone who lives there. So he had to contact that DA.
Oh wow.
And they found a state patrolman that she knew, who asked her to come in and talk about SIDS. Mm-hmm. And during the course of the conversation, he said, "Are you sure that's how your babies die?" Or something to that effect. And this is after she went over her babies. And she, and I saw an interview with Fitzpatrick, and he said she put her head down, and then she lifted her head, and she said, "I've been praying for God he would forgive me." And then she confessed to killing him. They wanted to find out what was the cause, and she did admit to how she killed them, and she did choose methods that would be hard to detect. Okay, and they're also easy. So they all died by suffocation, like I said. I'm not going to go into the big details. Basically, we had a pillow smothered in one. One was being held against her shoulder until she stopped breathing, against the mother's shoulder. Bath towel was used on one, and another pillow. So,
wow.
Yeah. And the main reason was because they cried.
Yeah, she complained about the children's behavior. Crying was the principal reason. And
I mean, the one that was killed with the bath towel, he was the oldest one that was killed. And he was having a hard time dealing with his sister's death, who just died 3 weeks prior. Yeah. So he was obviously acting out. He was obviously upset, and she killed him with a bath towel. Now, that one really should have been picked upon as not being SIDS because he had a bloody nose and shown signs of struggle. But yet, it was written up as SIDS. And we really have to, I hate to use this term, but it is blame Dr. Steinschneider. Because using her as the example, his theory about how SIDS happened actually backed up the study of SIDS for a few decades. It probably allowed a lot more mothers to kill their children and get away with it.
Yeah.
Because basically the signs of suffocation were being ignored. Yeah. Oh, that's just SIDS.
They were changing up the facts to fit their hypothesis.
Yeah, he was being called to cases.
Not even a theory.
Right. He was being called to cases as an expert witness. And yes, there's probably a few of those mothers or a few of those parents that were brought up that it probably was accidental death. But how many of them weren't and were let out?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't go back and retry them all.
Yeah.
But it really makes you think. And then here's Fitzpatrick going over it, coming not from a medical perspective, but from a lawyer's perspective, going, something's wrong here. He calls other experts, and they agree with him. And it really gets me, the one that had the bloody nose and obvious signs of struggle. how that was ignored.
That last one.
But,
too many red flags to ignore.
But I remember seeing the interview with one of the nurses, too. I'm not sure if it was the same one I mentioned earlier, but she was talking about her and another nurse went to the doctor and said, you can't release the child back to the mother. She's very dispassionate. There's things that go wrong when the mother's around here visiting her. You can't let her go. And they said, well, he literally said, you're just being hysterical.
Didn't he fire one of them?
I don't remember that. I don't remember if he fired one. But he basically said they were being hysterical. They didn't know what they were talking about.
You're just being stupid. Right.
And the two women left that night. The child had been discharged to Juanita. And they said, do you really think she's going to survive the night? And she didn't. Literally died that night.
The very next day she was back.
And I'm not sure if that was the same one. One of the children was sent back and was the first child. Yeah, here it is. Molly was discharged in June 4th, 1970. She was discharged and sent home with an apnea monitor, the first infant to be given an apnea monitor. But she died the next night. So I believe it was Molly that the nurses were talking about.
Yeah.
And they warned him, but he had his paper. He wanted his name on this paper. And he had his theory, and this proved his theory.
Had to make his career. You know, folks, you see this kind of corruption in more than just the medical profession. Yeah. People changing up the facts to fit their narrative or whatever.
Right.
And it's disgusting because all these murders, the time for all these other murders to be committed was protracted because this guy was crashing around selling this idea that all these deaths are just an accident. And as you said, it held back research. Yeah. And it held back the truth.
I think in that same interview they were talking about how it used to be like 10 in every 100,000.
Yes.
I can't remember. Okay, I might have the numbers wrong, but
exactly.
It was like 10 in 100,000 used to be SIDS. It was a high number. And after they revamped and took his research out and redid research on SIDS, it dropped to like 1 or 2 per 100,000.
Yeah, really low.
It dropped to really low. So
rare occurrence.
Yeah, it's much more rare now. Of course, there's also been some good studies into SIDS.
Of course, researchers now are looking into the problem realistically.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, there was probably a lot back then too, but his paper was being held up as like the paper on it. And I wonder how many other researchers of SIDS were reading his paper going, now, wait a minute here. This doesn't fit right.
Lying through his teeth to get published.
I don't know if it was lying as in he was deceiving people or he needed...
We really don't have his admission on that.
He was just trying to fit the facts to his hypothesis.
Right, exactly.
Is what it was.
Trying to slam that round peg into a square hole.
Correct. Now, I'm just going to mention it. Her husband, some people might think, well, what her husband all this? He's totally innocent. In fact, I think he ended up with the most emotional problem dealings with it. He got himself a vasectomy at one point because he really thought it was his fault.
Oh dear.
Kids were passed, the children were dying. He thought
he was a genetic cul-de-sac of some kind.
Right.
That's
It might have been me.
Well, that really is disgusting.
It is.
You know, to make a person feel as if they're the problem when they're not.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and to hide the truth.
They did adopt a boy.
That was Jane.
They also adopted another child named Scotty, but they gave him back to the adoption agency because she did finally go see a psychiatrist at that time, and she admitted she thought about hurting Scotty. Mm-hmm. So there was an almost confession then.
No, because there's no follow-up.
Right.
On her case.
So there we have another medical professional who doesn't follow up on it. There's no more information on the psychiatrist. Why? Just that.
Yeah.
Now, he did suggest, or she doesn't say, doesn't give me information on the psychiatrist, that Juanita should be committed and be put under observation. And Juanita refused, so all this psychiatrist could do was just medicate her at that point.
Oh my God.
And in 1972, she started to try to kill herself on multiple occasions. Whether this was guilt, whether this was a way to keep the Munchausen by proxy going, because one of the nurses in that interview I saw was like, she wanted, in 1972, tried to kill herself on multiple occasions. Was this guilt or was this another way of Munchausen by proxy appearing. Mm-hmm. In the same interview I saw with those nurses and William Fitzpatrick, the one nurse mentioned how much Juanita seemed to enjoy the attention she was getting from the medical staff. Mm-hmm. Being suicidal. Uh-huh. It could have been she was depressed and was really suicidal, but could it also been, I'm feeling suicidal because now and then she gets that rush again from the people stepping in to try to save her. Exactly. We don't know. It could be either way. At one point, she then had a hysterectomy. This is all prior to her confession. There are a lot of other things happened I don't want to go into with her, but at 76, that's when they adopted the child that, he's fine. Jay. 93, Juanita had a heart attack. And then in 94, that's when Fitzpatrick and the State Patrol questioned her and confessed. The thing, of course, once she gets a lawyer, they coerced that confession out of me. It was all a lie. They're just coming after me, and it was... The interesting thing was, at one point, they even tried to claim that the State Patrol had falsified the evidence or tampered with the evidence. And they actually had to hold up her trial at one point just to see if that was the case, and they hadn't. So the judge allowed the evidence to be entered. So they were trying everything to get her off. I mean, it had been, this is 20-odd years since the killings. Right. If murder had a statute of limitations, she would have got away with it, if you think about it. But since it doesn't. Absolutely. Quieter than ever. Still. So then she is arrested, and she goes to, is it Wendy? Yeah, Wendy, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Which is, if you know anything about New York State's prison system, there's only 3 prisons for women. And so Wendy is usually the one they send the high-profile ones to. Okay. And she was sent there, still confessing her innocence, which, once you're in prison, if you've been accused of killing children and you're with mothers who can't see their kids, you're a low man on the totem pole. It could be she was really trying to claim her innocence, or it could be she was trying to protect herself. Was that lower than a rapist? Oof, yeah. Wow. I didn't know you'd get much lower than that, but think about it. Here we are. Think about it. You're in a women's prison. A lot of these women have children. They can't see. Yeah, they can't see those kids. And here comes a woman who killed her children. Yeah. Oh, the visceral. I mean, no. It's going to be a hard time, for the kid killer. Yeah, but Juanita only served a few years because she died of pancreatic cancer. Mm-hmm. But this case is, it's heartbreaking because that doctor could have gone a different way with his paper. Absolutely, if he'd been honest with himself about his research. And listened to the other staff members. Exactly, and that SIDS was not the answer. Mm-hmm. I hate that when influencers in a profession gain enough influence so that, they can independently act on something, like research of this nature, but then they get tunnel vision. They get too maybe obsessed with finding an answer to the problem. Right. And they overlook a lot of obvious things, such as a mother's murdering tendencies towards their own kids. Anyway. I kind of went over some of the stuff prior, like the trifecta of serial killers. There really isn't anything in her past that would give you any clue that she would have done this. I mean, some people might say, well, 2 of her siblings died when they were young. Maybe that put the idea in her head. Maybe. Yeah, but this idea that SIDS is somehow congenital, that's a fabrication. I think it was a situation where we were dealing with a mentally ill woman and who was never diagnosed. She probably had postpartum depression, which was not diagnosed much back then, if at all. Not at all. Obviously, her husband could not be around because he was the main breadwinner. Oh, yeah. And it just might have been a rush for her, Might have, dropped out of Newark Valley High at grade 10 and got married right away. So the question to this whole thing... I don't know if that... Other people go on... They drop out of middle school and get married and don't go on to kill their own kids. I know. So...
There's got to be other things at work here.
Yeah.
There's got to be other elements.
Like I said, nobody gave her the diagnosis what she was like on Munchausen by proxy, but it seems to be the most likely reason she was doing this. And the ones who, it is majority, 95% of the people who suffer from that are mothers, and the victims are usually their children.
Yeah.
It is a small percentage of elderly in care settings that also get affected by it. They may have a nurse who is suffering from it and gets off on, is using the patients as a way to get their sympathies.
Right.
That's a smaller percentage. But basically anyone who's in a situation where they have a caretaker could potentially become a victim of this. I don't know how much research is being done into victims who have survived. I mean, I was doing my quick little research. They were talking about notable cases. And I guess the rapper Eminem, his mother had this. He got out. Of course, his rap career takes off. He turns around and adopts his younger siblings. Or sibling. I know he adopted his brother just to get him out of the situation. There are also horrible cases. There's a documentary on YouTube, Hulu, about her mother and her daughter, Gypsy. Apparently, Gypsy had all these horrible health problems. She had cancer, she had diabetes, she had all this, and they were constantly doing fundraisers for her, and people were helping this poor family out. It was a single mom and her daughter. And one day, mom ends up dead. Daughter killed her. Daughter's fine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with her.
Nothing wrong with her.
Well, adventures in Munchausen syndrome.
Yeah. And in that case, you could say it was like an abused partner finally lashing out and getting out of the situation. Yeah. That particular case, that girl is still in prison, but she feels like she's much freer now. Even though she's in prison, she feels more like a person.
Well, she doesn't have her abusive parent, lording over her life anymore. And in such a way. Yeah. Oh my goodness sakes.
It's a hard case to talk about, and it's kind of a sad case. Oh, definitely a sad case. Not kind of. It is definitely a sad case. And it's a kind of a bummer to finish our 52nd episode on.
Before we go, I want to mention the Murderous Mothers Hall of Infamy here. Other mothers who kill. There's Shirley Jane Turner.
Oh, did you write down what the name is for?
I'm leaving this for our listeners to look up.
All right.
Andrea Yates, Deanna Lenny, Susan Smith, Michelle Blair, Rachel Grammer, Teresa Riggi, Mary Beth Tinning, Catherine Knight, Stacy Castor.
Stacy Castor, I remember her.
Matthew says, check them out.
Yeah. And we have that developing story over in the western states that I've been following since September. But we're not quite sure who committed the act, whether it was the mother or the father. And I'm sorry, this podcast will not cover Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell.
No.
They're not from New York. And I'm trying to stay away from contemporary true crimes. This is pretty close. I mean, she was convicted in the 90s, but
and died in 98. So it's late 20th century. Yeah.
So that's Juanita Hoyt. Very sad story. I'm glad though that there's more channels for people who are in positions like healthcare, teaching, and that have more channels to report things like this. Yeah. I think if those nurses had one more place to go to report.
I think, if those caregivers had some other outlet to go to with their report on their suspicions about this and to present their own facts to this third party, outside the clinic, you're right. Things may have been different. We may have been able to save lives then instead of letting this ridiculous research on SIDS go on.
Right. So, which didn't help the actual SIDS cases either.
No, it didn't.
Because SIDS is basically the catch-all term when they don't know what a child died. Really.
That's basically it, isn't it? Yeah. All of a sudden infant death syndrome because we don't have any other cause.
But this paper set it back because now, it's suffocation.
Yeah.
the baby must have been sleeping wrong in the crib. They must have had too many soft pillows. I mean, remember when we had our children, about the time she was arrested and convicted, we were young parents at that point. Yeah. We were told not to have a bumper around the crib. Yeah. We were told
all this crazy
firm
stuff.
Mattresses only. You had to lay your baby a certain way, and they just changed that a couple of years back, too.
Firm mattresses, no blankets.
No blankets.
No pillows.
Yeah.
And they're just lay them in as is in their jammas.
And it was funny because our cat would sleep with them, but he'd always sleep at their feet. Yeah. Frankenstein 1 would sleep at their feet.
Oh, yeah.
He never would do anything to harm the kitty, the children. Yeah. But there would be people freaking out. No, you can't. You've got to keep that cat out of the room. Well, first of all, you couldn't keep the cat out of the room. He would get in somehow, even though you have the crib next to the bed. No. Yeah. Let's not get into that.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
But all right.
Well, this is our season finale.
Season finale.
All right.
Our 52nd episode. So that's a year's worth of listening for you.
Extra grisly subject.
But this is Unearthly Upstate. It's more than just about ghosts and urban legends too.
Absolutely, we're more than about just that stuff. Yeah, so thank you again. Thank you all this while for listening.
Thank you for everybody who's been slowly building up our listenership too.
Thank you for listening to our ghastly podcast.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Unearthly Upstate. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and on our webpage. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. Please like, share, and review on your favorite platform. Unearthly Upstate is an Animator Liar production. The show is produced by Mari and Matt Manette, with purring provided by Honey and Lloyd. Research and writing by Mari Manette. Music is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Unless otherwise stated in the episode, the places mentioned in the broadcast are not paid or contact us for any type of promotion. Please check out our webpage for credit and sources for the episode. Thank you.